Scott Sellers, the president, CEO, and co-founder. Better get that right, co-founder. You must have a co-founder with you with Azul. Thanks for joining us on Tech and Sec Weekly.
Thank you, Chris. Great to be with you today.
Wonderful. And I understand you're here in Australia, so it's great. Welcome to Australia. You're based in California otherwise. Maybe let's introduce us to Azul, and then we'll go through your purpose of being in, sunny Sydney. I don't know what Melbourne's like today, but yeah, your purpose here in Australia.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. And yes, first time I've been to Australia, and it's been lovely. We've been here for the week, and we're in Sydney and now in Melbourne, and I've just enjoyed it tremendously. So excited to come back soon as well. So Azul as a company has a 20-year heritage, specifically addressing pain points associated with the Java platform. And as you may know, Java is truly ubiquitous and in the enterprise and in universities and public sector settings. It really is the heart of much of what's going on in DevOps today. And we can get into the details of that. But really, what we focus on is providing the world's best Java platform and enabling DevOps teams to more effectively and efficiently meet their business needs.
Maybe what's the platform, where's the strengths, I suppose, for the platform itself? And obviously it's focused for enterprise. And we'll also touch on the security aspect naturally as well. But yeah, what's the sort of the real strengths of the platform that you've got?
Absolutely. So to give just a little bit of background on Java, which I think, would help people understand, where this all comes from. Java, of course, was invented by Sun in the late 90s and really has flourished as a very, very popular platform and language for which most applications in the enterprise now are developed using Java language or other Java-like languages. And it's an open source platform. So in 2006, Sun open sourced all of Java. And I think that's one of the reasons that Java has continued to flourish is there is no one single vendor that controls Java. And, I think if you look at some of the most successful open source projects ever, I think you'd put both Java and Linux probably as the two that, clearly have been massively successful. And I think the nature of the fact that both are open source have really led to the popularity and the success and really kind of no end in sight, for each and overall in the enterprise and really, computer science in general, right?
I was going to raise that. It's not going anywhere, is it? It's a fundamental language as part of the sort of software ecosystem. Being around for 20 odd years, I take it you have a lot of confidence on where the platform's going.
Absolutely, continues to grow, and we've been Azul as a company, as I mentioned, we have a 20-year heritage, so we've seen a lot through those 20 years in terms of the evolution of the platform and the popularity, and there's always waves of interest and sort of the new hot language of the day, and when you look at the various stats of usage and developers developing different applications and things like that, of course we always look at those, and one of the things that continues to make Java so popular is just the vast amount of frameworks and libraries and open source features, capabilities that allow for applications to be developed so readily. And when you think about application development, nothing is written from scratch. A lot of it is just pulling various pieces from open source projects and open source libraries and frameworks and these types of things. And most of that is Java and continues to be developed in Java. So you can think about it really like a flywheel that once it gets spinning, it gets faster and faster and faster and almost becomes a self-perpetuating level of success. And that certainly is the case for Java. I think the other thing that happened was significant in the overall life of Java so far is beginning in 2019, the open source community which develops Java, which is called OpenJDK, the OpenJDK community, and that with us involved and bigger companies like Oracle and IBM and Red Hat, we collaborate very effectively within the OpenJDK community. Beginning in 2019, we changed how future versions of Java are developed and released. And before that, it was sort of like a big bang release model where you
Yeah.
defined all the features, and it took 3, 4, 5 years to develop kind of the next major version of Java. And the delivery schedules were very difficult to predict. And, it was frustrating because you'd want to get some feature in. And even if something wasn't to be released for another 18 months, you couldn't touch it because all the other features needed to go. And it was just, it felt very antiquated. And so beginning in 2019, the community moved to a train-based release methodology, which of course is much more typical nowadays in terms of agile development and continuous improvements and those types of things. So now, every 6 months, like clockwork, every March, every September, a new version of Java is released. And if a feature is not ready to go, well, it doesn't go in that release. It maybe go in the next one or the next one after that. And what that's allowed beginning in 2019 was there was a lot of other capabilities and features, functions that had come from other languages that were missing in Java. But beginning in that 2019 timeframe with all these release trains, now all of those different things have come onto the Java platform for the most part. And as a result of that, Java is really like leading
Yep.
the hearts and minds now of developers, because it really is quite advanced in terms of really cool new features, capabilities that developers are really asking for. And I would even go so far as to say that Java itself and the Java releases are moving faster than developers can consume them. And I think that's exactly what you want to see in a very modern, innovative platform like Java is.
And I'm sure the predictability that those releases are coming through help the market as well understand what's happening and where it's going. The cost implications for this is obviously being open source as well, and as you say, a sort of a new formatted delivery train, as you put it. What are the cost implications? That's keeping costs down and highly competitive for enterprises.
Yeah, I think the fact that it is open source and that every vendor that provides the runtime of the language is called a JVM or a JDK, which is sort of the same thing but used for development purpose. So when you hear the terms JVM, JDK, we're talking about the piece of software that actually is required to run a Java or Java-based
Got it.
application or infrastructure. So because all JVM vendors, ourselves, Oracle, IBM, Red Hat, Amazon has one, Microsoft has one, so they're readily available from a lot of different people. They're all fully compatible with each other, and that's because of the set of tests called the TCK test that in order to be Java compliant, you have to pass the set of tests, which in a given release is about 110 or 120,000 individual tests to say, this version of Java, say Java 17, in order for you to say you are Java 17 compliant, you must pass all these tests. The OpenJDK community in Java in general has been exceptional about never splintering or fragmenting, or that our version of Java is incompatible with Oracle's or IBM's or what have you. And so that complete agreement in terms of what it means to be Java 17 compliant has really allowed for wonderful uniformity. The reason that matters ultimately to developers and to enterprises is because they have choice. They have
Yeah.
choice of which Java vendor or project that they want to standardize in terms of what JVM they want to use. And there are many great free ones available. Azul provides a freely downloadable Java runtime. We have several 100 million downloads a year of that. Very, very popular. No charge, 100% open source software. But then, of course, enterprises want commercial support for that type of what is truly business critical infrastructure software that they use when they put real applications that are driving revenue in
Yeah.
production. Of course, you want a fully supported stack. So one of the recent dynamics that has happened is that there has been a very quick movement over the last 5 years away from Oracle's JVM, which again is also based on the open source code, OpenJDK, but Oracle licenses under commercial terms. And those commercial terms have become more and more restrictive over time. They also are charging more and more as time progresses. So, for example, in the last 5 years, the prevalence of the Oracle JVM has moved from, it used to be 65, 70% typically you'd find a given application would be running the Oracle JVM. That's now less than 30. That's a Gartner
Right.
stat. So, and surveys and other things really play that out. We also hear from analysts that like Gartner and others, that Oracle's revenue has roughly tripled during that time. So what does that mean? Market share is going down, revenue is going up. It means the amount that they're charging to enterprises on an individual basis is going up, up, up. And recently in January, Oracle, for the fourth time in 4 years, changed either the license terms or the price. And this last time, it was quite dramatic in that instead of sort of sensible pricing, which is based on usage and how many servers or how many cores are being used to run Java, which is how most enterprise software is charged and licensed, Oracle's moved to a per employee concept.
Right.
So regardless of how much an enterprise is using, if you have 5,000 people, and by the way they define employees is not just full-time employees, it includes contractors and agents, and it's a very broad definition. A single copy of Java running in a 5,000 person organization can actually be more than $1 million a year in terms of what Oracle is now charging their customers. So frankly, it's very nonsensical and
But also an
Oracle's,
opportunity for companies like Azul that are a bit more dynamic. I think it
absolutely.
also suggests that the market is price sensitive as well, right? So one of their fundamentals of using Java being open source is they expect it to be competitive in terms of price versus the other proprietary systems.
Well, and the good news for all of this, and again why Java continues to be so popular, is there's choice. You don't have to use the
Yeah.
Oracle JVM. You can use freely available JVMs, or for those enterprises that need commercial support, they have vendors like Azul, and certainly our business is flourishing not only because of what's going on with the Oracle situation and enterprises and unis and public sector entities looking for choice, looking for a better offering instead of closed source, proprietary, expensive. They would much prefer open source, vendor neutral, great support at a much more attractive price. But there are also other things going on in the Java space that we should talk about too, in terms of using the JVM to solve other problems, like for example, cloud cost and security and those other types of things. We could talk about that as well, Chris.
Well, I was going to go either way. One, you just mentioned unis. You've just and you're in Melbourne there, obviously, but you've just signed the University of Sydney. They've just selected Azul as the institution's sole Java provider, switching from Oracle Java. So that definitely underlines two things. One is what you've just mentioned in terms of moving away from Oracle due to pricing and being locked in. And the other one is the purpose of your visit to Australia. You've been in Australia for a number of years. What are you actually looking to do here in terms of meeting with partners and clients?
Right. So we've been doing business in Australia for about 5 years, roughly, and a lot of that has been supported remotely. And as the Australian market and New Zealand, of course, and frankly Asia Pac in general, but specifically to Australia, a lot of the market has found us, right? And just as our reputation has continued to grow worldwide, really as a strong number two to Oracle, and also some unique products that we'll talk about. More and more of our natural inbound interest has come from the Australian market, and so organically we've gotten excited about the Australian market. And so initially, 5 years ago, we were supporting from afar, and as the market continued to grow, it made obvious sense for us to start to put teams in Australia. And so now we have full-time people working in Sydney and Melbourne, directly selling to enterprises and others within the Australian market. But even more importantly, it's so important to develop value-added reseller partners and distributors, so that we're a relatively small company. We can't touch everyone, and obviously that's a channel strategy. And so one of my main purposes this week, in addition to meeting some of our existing customers and meeting with prospects, is to meet with the channel network and our distribution partner and our resellers, and really just get them excited about Azul. Continue to enable them to be successful, and the response has been fantastic. So we're very excited about the channel network that we're quickly enabling here in Australia.
Right. And what about in the region as well, Scott? Some exposure in Singapore and Asia Pacific. Where are you across the region?
Absolutely. So our Asia Pac operations are actually run out of Singapore. So our regional sales head sits there, and that's kind of, you can think about that as our headquarters of the Asia Pac operations. But
Yeah.
we basically now are built, whether it's people on ground selling, or it's through this channel network now that we're putting significant amount of investment in. We have existing business in, like you mentioned, Singapore, Malaysia, Philippines, Japan, Korea, China. Just had a nice win in India, clearly here, Australia, New Zealand. So, we really have had nice breadth of success in the area. And that's why we continue to double down in our interest here, because we feel like we just are kind of at really the beginning in terms
Yeah.
of the growth potential.
Well,
And
that's part of my question. How does APAC Australia look when you look at your company globally? You're seeing good growth here, and things like sort of advanced use of the platform itself, the skill sets.
No question. It's as you might expect, being a U.S. based company, North America represents the biggest territory for us, but it's not even half anymore. So,
Right.
the combination of U.S. and Europe represent the bulk of our business. But the Asia Pac, and including Japan in that, far and away is our fastest growing territory, and one that we feel is where we're certainly putting in relative speaking more investment in Asia Pac and Japan, more so than any other territory, just given the growth potential that we see.
Great. Well, one other area I wanted to cover was obviously security. Log4j. Well, that was a few years ago now, but it's still making the headlines. And what's some of the key challenges around the Log4j vulnerability, and why are companies grappling with what appears to be an ongoing issue?
Absolutely. So Log4j certainly was pretty famous, or notorious is probably a better way of describing it. And it was a significant vulnerability that was found in the library called Log4j, which, as the name implies, is basically a very popular logging system that Java applications use to output information and be able to provide a very efficient logging capability. So the use of Log4j is quite prevalent. And it's an example of the popularity of Java in general. And just the fact that it truly is everywhere means it's frankly quite a wide attack surface by the bad guys, right? And so this is always the challenge. With more popularity becomes more eyes and more opportunity to attack. And so it's not a surprise that Java continues to be one of the platforms that oftentimes the bad guys will look to. That doesn't mean Java is insecure. It just means Java is popular. So of course,
Yeah.
Bad guys want to attack the biggest surface. So Log4j in particular, there was a very problematic vulnerability found in Log4j, and that really caused a significant amount of time and investment to try to update applications to use newer versions of Log4j, which remove the vulnerability. But it is a very challenging problem. One of our customers that we were chatting with recently said they have completely fixed their Log4j situation 10 times. Right. So it's if you remember the game, the whack-a-mole game, where you used to whack down the whatever, the little squirrels or whatever that would pop up. That's Log4j. It's something that is like with a lot of software in general. It just is very difficult to completely quote prove that something like Log4j or any other popular framework is completely eliminated from deployment. So Azul has a new product that's called Azul Vulnerability Detection, and as the name implies, it was designed for these sorts of problems in mind. And specifically what Azul Vulnerability Detection does is, as a SaaS service, it monitors running Java applications and in real time is able to tell in a production setting. So it's things that most matter the most, right? Most vulnerable, most problematic if something were to be exploited. It monitors that in real time and is able to provide actionable intelligence to security teams and DevOps teams about which application is not only just potentially running Log4j, but is it actually being exploited? Is it actually using the classes that actually have the vulnerability? And so, contrary to other scanner-based security solutions and others that just emit reams of information about potential vulnerabilities, AVD provides precise information as to whether or not an application is actually using the version of Log4j that has the vulnerability, whether it's actually loading the classes where the vulnerability exists. And that actionable intelligence is really the key element of the AVD service, which allows for much more effective remediation and just an overall much stronger, secure software supply chain strategy.
Is that one of the reasons why it's at the application level? Hence, how many applications enterprises are running, their visibility gets affected in that regard?
That's right. So the AVD product is able to monitor an entire Java fleet across an enterprise, and that literally can be thousands, if not tens of thousands of different applications for widespread deployment in a big enterprise. So that's a major problem for security teams to really feel like they've completely, they can go and know definitively in production that they are not running any vulnerable code. And it's the in production aspect of our AVD product that makes it very different than many other security solutions that are really only focused on development side or on the QA side, kind of pre-production use. And I liken those others to the moat around the castle, right? And it's important that you build the moat because, of course, you don't want to knowingly put insecure code into the castle. But until now, no one's inside the castle looking at what is actually being run because those scanners and those other tools aren't appropriate to be run in production because they're very expensive from a performance perspective. They're not practical to run because they take performance. The way that they work is there's a huge performance penalty associated with running them. So no one runs them in production. So the AVD product for us takes no performance tax, no performance penalty. And now in a coherent, layered, secure strategy, you use the existing tools for development, which are very good, work really well to create the moat, and using something like AVD in the castle. And that combination of a layered strategy, can have a complete end-to-end secure software supply chain strategy.
Well, I think security is a fundamental, as you mentioned, the size of and the spread of Java makes it a threat. I'm going to edit this part, but a threat vector. So it makes it a threat vector. So if enterprises using it or deploying Java need to be aware of it. What's some of the onboarding configuration requirements? So if they want to come to Azul, for example, and switch over, is it a relatively straightforward process? What's kind of the onboarding involved?
Yeah, good question. And one we get oftentimes because they may be using, say, for example, the Oracle JVM or another one. The beauty of the fact that all of this comes from the same open source code, and even that project, OpenJDK project, includes instructions on how to build a JVM, and we all build it the same way. And so, this is why it's so straightforward to change JVMs. There is no, quote, migration or, some of the other complicated things you might have heard about if you're moving from, one vendor's product to the next. It's simply, and this is a little technical, but all you're doing is changing an environment variable to point an application which JVM to use. And so it's trivial on a given server to, test an application. Here you are running with the Oracle JVM, shut down the application, change the environment variable, now use Azul's JVM. Application works perfectly the same. No change to the app, no recompilation, None of it. It's a trivial, just really you could think about it as just a configuration change. And it really is that straightforward to
Is
go
it like
from
a day, or that's it? It can be done in a day.
minutes, literally. And
Right.
of course, that's oversimplifying. I mean, that, of
Yeah.
course, these things,
There's a risk
go
management
through.
process to go through, I imagine, but still,
Exactly.
it's
But in
relatively
a, in
simple.
a, in a true realistic scenario, we've had customers that have transitioned literally tens of thousands of servers over a weekend, moving off Oracle onto Azul. And
Yeah.
others, of course, take longer because, as you say, they have risk management and they want to go through things a bit more slowly. But those are really more risk decisions and, hypothetical risk, not real risk, but certainly understand why you want to be methodical about it. From a technical perspective, it literally is done in minutes. And then it's a
Yeah.
matter of, how quickly do you want to roll that out into your various, different development, QA, and ultimately production environments.
It's also always a critical factor, given the resources often required to change vendors. I think that's that's another sort of reason for those observations around moving away from Java. It's relatively straightforward.
Right.
So
Yeah.
again,
And the credit, it's not a credit to Azul, it's credit to Java because the
yeah,
architecture of how Java works and the OpenJDK community, the compatibility testing that I mentioned with the TCK tests and having to pass all of those to say you are Java compliant, that's what's created choice and
yeah.
and that enables obviously, how easy it is to move from one JVM to another.
Wonderful. Well, look, you've got runs on the board already this week in Australia. And it's on Chief IT is the University of Sydney release. It's worth having a look. We'll have that link in the show notes as well. But Scott Sellers, there in Melbourne, visiting Australia. You're the CEO, president, and co-founder with Azul. Thank you very much for joining us today on MySecurityTV and our Tech and Sec Weekly.
Thank you, Chris. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and to spread the word of Azul throughout the Australian market.
Wonderful. And if I ever met a Java specialist, it would be someone like you that's been in the industry for so long with a platform like Azul. So pleasure talking to you, Scott.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.
Thanks.